Hi guys, thank you for tuning into another video. Hope you're all keeping safe and keeping well. Today we're moving on with our cutting. In the last video we worked on quite a classic triangular graduation above shoulders. Really quite a fundamental cut for any hairdresser or any hairstylist to have in their repertoire. So really beautiful haircut to work with your clients in salon. And you can also push that to get quite creative when you're working salon creatively or academy creative work as well. So today we are going to push on with level 3 style criteria work. So working with asymmetricity today, which is quite difficult. I normally find that asymmetric haircuts, if you're working hair long asymmetric, it's very difficult to get something looking incredible. There was a case over in Camden, LHA, where I was working with a student over there who completely changed my mind. Absolutely beautiful work on a lady with longer hair, which was absolutely fantastic. So there are ways to make your work feel incredible for you and look incredible. My mannequin is obviously quite short, moving on from our graduation last time. So I'm going to work something a little bit shorter. I'm going to have a little bit of fun with it today. We might look to go quite short in this left-hand side. So my idea is to have something quite short. We want to, as I say, I'm very fussy about going off the face shape and bone structures. So I want to try and influence a few little areas in her face here. So she's got an amazing little area from her cheekbone to her lip area. Lots of people do have that, where their cheekbones are quite prominent and then their lip line's quite prominent as well. So it's quite a nice little way to work. So I'm going to look to have my left-hand side line coming somewhere in around about here. A little bit more of an angle facing back, so something slightly rounded. And then we're going to start to come around and tuck that shape in a little bit higher in the back. So connect that side in with the back piece. And then start to flow my shape slightly longer. So I'm working with a rounded shape into something triangular into the back, where I start to maintain some length around here and just flow a really beautiful length round and sit this side somewhere around about my jawline, possibly a little bit lower, depending on where you want to go with the haircut. Obviously we know from before I've got a little round fringe knocking around in here somewhere, so I'm going to lift that up again. I haven't decided yet what we're going to do with the fringe. In hair cutting, you can sort of flip your idea. I guarantee you at some point in your training or in your work, you're going to get to a point that that's not going to work, we need to change it. So being quite versatile with your overall technique and the way your hair cut is moving is very important. So I may put something slightly asymmetric in here, I haven't quite decided, or we may keep it quite blunt and really square. We'll work onto that a bit later. I've sectioned my top area away, so my horseshoe section again from our low recession, and that runs around the head shape and keeping it quite high. It almost comes a little bit higher in the top because I want to keep some weight in here behind the ear, and then I drop personally into a point below my crown. You can go full horseshoe, it's completely up to you. I just find it a little bit easier to get my balance on my top if I work a point, and it keeps a little bit more weight in the overall back section as well. Here I want to control a bit of length and a bit of weight in there, so I think working with a point works quite nicely. It's not wrong, as I say, to move on and do something horseshoey. So let's get moving. So I am going to start in my left-hand side, okay? So depending on where you want to go with your haircut and your roadmap that you would have created for yourself, your head sheet that you would have created, you'll find out where you want to start and where you want to control your length from. Because this is going to be my shorter side, I want to make sure I get my line in first of all, and then I can very easily just ping that shape round and connect it into this underneath piece here, where we're keeping a little bit of length and a little bit more softness. For me, if you're working with asymmetricity or disconnection, it's very important to have an area of disconnection within, an area of connection within your disconnection, sorry. Same with asymmetricity, I feel it has to connect somewhere. If you're just sort of keeping a short shape and then banging a long piece in, a random piece of hair, it can sometimes look a little bit untidy or unfinished. So I'm one for connecting, which is where shape comes in, your internal lengths come back in, and internal productivity. Okay, so we are going to start. I'm going to come around this side here so you can see where I go. It's going to be a little bit difficult to keep you seeing without me standing in the way. So I'm going to try my best to keep out of the way. Okay, so top sections away. People who work with me in Academy will know that I am very fussy on sections. Two reasons why. Number one, the more groomed your hair is, the more comfortable I am at cutting hair personally. I find it a lot easier to keep my balance and keep my work incredibly clean. But also it looks good. If you've got a client in your salon and you've got your top section sectioned away, you've got 2 minutes to get them feeling confident with you. So if your top section is popped away and the person next to you has a really messy section with 4 or 5 clips knocking around, every single guest in the salon is going to start looking at you and thinking, goodness, that person knows how to cut hair, or they look like they know what they're doing. Then you've got to produce something beautiful, which is the stage 2. But for me, getting yourself on that comfort with your client, getting that confidence from your guest first of all, is the most important thing. And I find throughout my career of working in salons, just be working with my cleanliness and keeping my sections as neat and tidy as possible seemed to work really, really nicely for me when I was trying to build my guest column. Okay, so we're going to start here first of all with something called flat graduation. So round graduation, you'd be working with a diagonal section facing back. Triangular graduation, we work with a diagonal section facing forwards. That's pushing the hair back or pushing the hair forwards. I want this to sit very flat onto the guest's sort of cheekbone area, in between the cheekbones and the lips. So I'm going to keep my sections horizontal. And as I work up, I'm going to elevate my sections ever so slightly higher each time, which basically is going to start taking weight away from my sections as I go higher, which adds that slight tuck to the hair. If I was just to keep everything down onto one point, or my line, I'm going to basically create a big wedge, so something's going to stick out quite far, and I want that to almost tuck and give it a natural bevel. Okay, so that's the idea for this first piece. So I'm going to section in behind the ear, because I'm going to work something a little bit more creative with my outlines today. So my outlines are going to be quite strong. So I want there to be a slight, this is the idea anyway, I'm going to have a slight angle to my outline here, and then my outline here is going to come in and sit into there, and then I'm going to do something a little bit different with the other side. So my roadmap is set, but it is liable to change. When you are working creatively, don't worry if you do change your mind halfway through, okay? So we are going to start in this side piece. I'm going to try and stay out of the way. Ideally, you want to come right in front of the camera where that would be, but I want to move away so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to take a horizontal section. Keep your work really clean. Get that away. And first section we're going to bring down. Small end of the comb, keeping a really, really nice tension running through here. And I am going to do it in my fingers because I want that slight elevation. I want to build a bit of graduation in here. So if we remember working with our elevation chart where we're elevating the hair off its natural fall, it's going to create some form of graduation. Okay, so I do want to build a little bit of something in here. So my first section is going to come in here. I'm going to cut that away. Assess where that falls. Have a little look where that's going to sit. It's going to come straight onto the corner of the guest lip. Just quickly as well, I'm using my wise part comb and my wing scissors again. So a small amount of tools. I'll explain this later on. Okay. So we'll move on. I'm going to take that a little bit shorter. And assess where that's going to fall. Beautiful. So now we're going to move on to the back. So you can do the whole side if you want to, and then move into the back. I find this is a little bit easier to keep control of your overall look and keep control of your elevation. So we're now going to come straight into our round graduation, round into the back. So we groomed all of that hair out of the way. So you won't really need a clip if you're working with really wet hair and you've groomed all that hair into place. It looks very neat and tidy, but you won't need to use a clip, which is important for this little piece. I'm going to spin her around so you can see where we're going to go now. So my first point of elevation was in here. So my first point of elevation for this underneath piece, round into the back, is going to be the same. Take that away. And then your body position is crucial. So we want everything to be pulling out to our body, wherever we're moving around. So moving around the head is so key to keep your balance on both sides. So if I spin her so you can see, I'm gonna start tucking my fingertips down into the nape of the guest's head. So as we're working with graduation, this is gonna be our shortest point in the whole haircut. So we're gonna start to build length on top of this first section so that every single section that goes up higher up the top of the head towards my original horseshoe is going to get longer and longer and longer and longer. Okay, so we'll assess where that wants to fall, and I'm quite happy with the way that sits. So we're going to move back into here. Second section, nice and fine, working up the head. Clip that away, just to keep that out of the way completely. And I'm going to spin around so you can see my elevation now where I go with this. So first section was down here. My second section, I'm going to elevate slightly higher. I hope you can see this. I hope my arm's not in the way. It is in the way, but... So second section elevates to there. And then we're just going to work the exact same way and into the back again. So I spin that around so you can see. Second stage of elevation. This comes up to the exact same point as my second section on the side. Cut that away. And then twist back. And I would be moving round here, but I'm moving my mannequin round instead, just so that we can keep quite close to the camera so you guys can see. And then as we start tucking this down into the back, it's quite a nice little way to just flow that hair around. So this is making the hair want to almost dress off the head and sit back around into the nape of the hair. And then move back round. Next section high. So we're keeping our sections really neat and tidy. So important. Next section again. We're going to elevate higher. And then again move around our shape and spin her slightly. And see how our elevation is now lifting high. We're still well below that 90-degree angle. So it's still flowing weight into the hair. But keeping it coming higher is just going to take off that slight heaviness in the back. I know with graduated bob, as we explained last time, you do get a real heaviness in the underneath. If everything is pulled down onto the same point, it's just stacking hair on top of each other. So we've got to work with the shape of the head, remembering the head is round. It's not round, really. Some people's heads aren't round, some people's are, some people's have little divots. So you've got to make sure you find out what's going on in the hair. But as a principle, the hair is sort of round or oval shaped. So you've got to work with the shape of the head to get something really beautiful and really sitting nicely. And tucking that into here. So if we start to assess where we're going here at the moment, start to assess what we've done. If I spin her around to face the very front, we've lifted, get that out of the way, we've lifted our length in here, but each stage of elevation just starts to give you that slight natural bevel to it. So I can give her a shake or give it a little flip around, and it still wants to tuck in. And it's going quite nicely into somewhere in here where we want to accentuate all of this area of her. And then if we twist this round again, we can start to see our little round shape just wants to sit back off the face and give you that really nice sort of head hugging feel. All of this here, again, don't worry about this. This is all our external line. So we're working internally, similarly with what we did with our graduated bun. So anything externally, don't worry about it, leave it till later. So my last section here, leading up to the top, I'm going to take down and we're going to keep that elevation even higher. Lift and tuck. Nice, quite happy with the way that sits, so I'm going to move on. So I'm going to lower her down slightly, I hope you guys can still see. And now we're just going to work our classic round graduation. So groomed the hair all nicely out of the way, and now we keep our elevation flowing a little bit higher. And start stepping round into the back. So you can see where, when I pull the hair out, you can start to see your expanded shape. So people who have worked with me in the academy will know all I talk about is expanded shape. So if you poke your finger in the socket of the plug and the hair stands out on end, what are you going to see? What's your 3D shape? Okay, your 3D shape, if you imagine what the hair is doing and where the corners are forming, you can then find a way to take those corners out technically. So if I pull this out here, say she got electrocuted and we pulled that out, the hair's longer up the top here, and then when it comes down it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So you're coming high and then tucking in. And at my expanded shape, this hair would be out here and then sit into here. And then when I come to connect it with the top, if I say uniform layer that down, it's going to take that corner out nicely. It's still going to be a bit of a ring in here. So that corner is going to fall and you're going to get that heavy ridge. So if you think of where the hair is falling in your expansion and your expanded shape, it's quite a nice way to think about hair and really start to devise where your shape's going to go. And your roadmap can change quite heavily by using 3D shapes and expanded shapes. So we're going to continue round. So I'm now coming into the area above the top of the ears. So I want this to be my highest point of graduation for this underneath piece. So we're lifting high, head is now up, and I'm just underneath that graduation line. My elevations come from down here all the way to up here. Okay, so we're gradually working with the roundness of the head. Any higher, we're going to start moving into our layer. Okay, so we're getting from very heavy up until quite light with our graduation, and then we start to push forwards. So exactly as I was saying with that expanded shape, we're wanting our length to be quite high in here. If everything was too low, it'd come out here somewhere, and there's where your weight's going to be off this top piece. Okay, so we step round and keep a nice tension and just follow that guide. So twist her again, and even now here start to just tuck down and tuck round into our underneath. I'm going to step in front of the camera, get my water spray, and now again next section down. Really nice and clean sections. The cleaner your work, the cleaner your roadmap, the easier the haircut becomes, and you really don't find a way to lose yourself. And again, sections high, and I'm going to come round and start to tuck. Twist her again. As I say, really important to move your body around. The only reason I'm moving her is just to make sure I'm not standing in front of the camera. So we're going to cross-check. So cross-checking is, as we've said in every video, and everyone who you see working will say cross-checking is crucial. And it's just to make sure your work is perfect. You don't want to send somebody out with imperfects or imperfections in the hair. So we've worked our shape round diagonal facing back, so we're going to cross check the opposite way, okay? And let's spin this so you can see the cross check in. Going to pull out, and we get a very clean shape running through. Okay, good. And if we cross check that all the way to the top, nice, good. So we're going to carry on into here, and we've got 2 more sections left in this little back area. So we're going to lift high, take our shape, and then start to come round into our overall baseline. Come on, Dolly. Out. Hey, dog. So the dog came in. Right, we're going to tuck this down into here. And now we start to, I thought we had 2 sections left. We've only got 1 section really left in this back bit, but we are going to start to come into our overall outlines. So now we're going to want to start to elongate our length now into the front. Okay, so if we can see where we're running here with our front piece, sits really nicely in there, and then we get that real nice, beautiful sort of build up of weight back here, still keeping our length here, but running our length very short in the underneath. So our graduation shape is really sort of coming into effect now. And because we've worked it slightly rounded, we can have that sitting off the face, and it just really wants to hug the head and hug round the shape, which is really beautiful. Okay, so now we want to just flow that length somewhere longer into here. So I want to keep that around about her jaw length. Okay, so we're going to work something classic graduation, classic triangular graduation technique, but with a little bit of a tuck, so a little bit shorter. So this is something that I like to use when I'm working, say, Academy Creative hair, something where you want to start in the back and control that weight back here, but then you can push your length forwards. So head slightly forwards, and we're going to work it completely triangularly, okay? So very, very heavy, harsh sections here, but we're just flowing that round shape completely forwards. That's all we're doing. So I'm going to leave her there so you can see the elevation. So we're just now continuing our round shape from the back and pushing that into the front, but tucking our shape around. So I'm going to keep stepping in now. I'm going to keep stepping around the shape because I don't want to keep that outline here. In our graduated bob in the video before, we over-directed back, so we kept some weight in this outline. Now I don't want to do that. I want to take that weight away and come into here. So I want to start stepping around my shape and continue flowing with the head. So our shape has come round, and then we're going to continue that shape into about here, where we're going to start pulling out and starting to come a little bit wider in the side. Okay, so this is all about where we control our asymmetric shape now. So as I said earlier on, I like to have personally some connection to my asymmetric. I don't really like hair too much where it's in and then bang, you get a big long piece. That's my personal preference. You can do that, and if you think that looks beautiful, fantastic. You may think this doesn't look very good, but it's just a personal approach. And with level 3 and with creative hair, and when a lot of you will come on to doing shows and stage work, it's your personal preference. It's what you like in hair and what you don't like in hair. And we really try and encourage that here at the LHA. We want you to create your own work and create your own styles. So keep doing it. So now we're going to start tucking that shape in. So down we go. And I'm going to push our shape forwards. So lengthen her up again, so you can see. And I'm going to start stepping round, okay? So I want to control that length now and try and maintain a bit of length. Still don't want to go too crazy and too long, so I'm not over directing all the way back to where we were the first time. But this is just going to start elongating length, so I will start over directing hair from this section. So I'm pulling hair away from where it naturally wants to fall. Into there. Make sure we've got every piece from under here. And now just to check we're on the right track, I'm going to cross check. Okay, so I'm going to start to tuck this shape down a little bit, cross check, and it works nicely. So we know we're on the right direction. There I was a little bit worried that my shape was going to be a little bit too triangular almost. So as I say, cross checking is basically just to give you your little bit of shape, a little bit of control, and then we move on. Make sure you're on the right track and going in the right direction, okay? So now we're going to move back in again. So I'm going to lift her head up slightly. You don't have to do this. This is just personal preference from me. Helps me to control my weight and control my shape a little bit, okay? So as I go, start to step round. And we're going to tuck this shape in. And now we're over directing back to this point. Okay? So you see our outline starts to lift again in here. And that's good, we want that to happen. So now I can be quite creative and quite wacky with my outlines because I'm taking the weight and the security away from there. So everything now, we're going to over direct back into here. So this is where we act on now controlling our shape and controlling our weight. Okay, so lengthwise isn't such a problem. As I said earlier, we're working on our internal shape. So anything on your outline or on your length, we can take that up afterwards. If we're not happy with the length that it sits, we can push it forwards and push it up. That's not a problem at all. Everything that's important here is our internals. So we've got to make sure that our shape is absolutely clean. So that then once we've blow dried, all we then do is just push our shape and push our length in terms of into where we want to go on the guest's face. So now pull back, last section, and connect, and connect. So I'm going to see where this falls. I'm not sure where this is going to fall, but we'll have a little look. So it sits quite nicely, and I've pulled out all the top section. So I'm going to quickly pull that back in. And just check where that's going down here. So I'm going to want to pull that up a little bit higher. So I'm going to come back to here, my internal shape higher, I mean. So I'm just going to add some elevation and create a stronger shape. So see, I'm not taking anything off the outline there. The outline is staying the same because I can correct that later or take that to where I want it to be later. Just influencing my elevation, so taking some weight off this side piece here. So let me have a little look. Our asymmetric feel is coming together now, okay? So I'm going to blow dry this underneath piece. Personally, I quite like to blow dry my underneath area first of all, as you would have seen on the long disconnection video if you watched that. Reason for, I feel getting the underneath perfect is the absolute priority, and then anything on the top just dresses across. It's a personal preference again. Creative hair is about choosing what you like and finding what you like. Okay, so as I say most times, I'm going to speed this up in the edit. I may even cut this because I think I need to get moving, and I will come back in a bit. So I've blow dried and ran the irons through very, very gently. Okay. I used basically a wrap drying technique, as you'll have seen before in the last videos that I've done, just with my 9 vest brush. Something to create a little bit of bounce in the hair, but just working really naturally with the way the hair wants to work. So if we see now where we are, internally I'm quite pleased with what I've produced so far in there, but outlines need to be improved. So I love all of this here. You'll start to see with my work in the coming days, I'm quite sharp on my outlines. I think outlines are beautiful, real sharpness to them, a real solid feel to the look. If you want to go softer, work softer. Just leave a little bit more weight and a little bit more length in that underneath piece. It's again is all down to your choice and where you want to move with hair and where you really feel like hair looks beautiful. So I'm going to work my outlines. So I'm going to do something a little bit creative and a little bit jazzy, something very quite angled and working with a little bit more geometry in my outlines. So I'm happy with the length of this side, but I am going to just come through and clean everything through. So I like the way that sits quite neatly and quite tidily into that little front piece. I've ran quite a slightly angled line, sort of slightly rounder, just something so it comes into the very, very middle of my guest's face. Okay, as I say, they're the areas that I really want to have protrude and be my main focal point of her. So I'm happy with the length of this little front area here. So now outlines, as I say, are all personal, very, very personal, where you want to go with them and where you want to see them. I'm going to do something a little bit jazzy in here. So I'm going to spin her around, find her centre back. I'm going to work quite a clean outline into here. So I want to create strength. The image of this haircut for me is strength, so I want to create that strength in my overall outline here. So again, similarly to where we have with our graduated bob and our line above shoulders, support your scissors with your finger and just use your pointing technique to run through and create something. And then I want to accentuate this area behind the ear. So I'm going to come and clean this area all through as well. So in your level 3s, all this can be done with the clipper too. So you can complete another stage of your training just on your outline work. So quite happy with the way that sits. Let's come back in here. Tailor that down a little bit more. And now I'm going to basically connect that with this sew around here. I'm going to do something, again, slightly different into there. So I'm going to connect this middle piece with my line here. in here. Always use your mirrors as well. Mirrors are the most important friend to you in salon. All the way into the front. So here, as I said earlier on, with the outline in the front, I weren't too happy with that. I didn't want that to be so long, but it was the internal look we were going for, the internal shapes, what we were looking to create in there. So now is where I'm going to start to run my line up in the front. So my outline here, something quite jazzy. And now I want that fluidity now into the front piece. But that sits too long for my liking, the way that comes in here. So I want this to, remembering that our other side is up high, I want to keep this around the jawline. Okay, so I'm going to come in the other side and just double check that we've got all of that under there. And now comb through once and keep my head out the way. I'll move her in there actually. Probably a bit better. And just gently run that line into the weight line here. Excellent. So you can see it's quite a classic graduated bob shape. We've tucked in high, and then that weight line in there just flows into that front point. But also when we come back round here, kicked it. When we come back round here, we've got a much stronger, shorter shape in the front, which gets your asymmetricity really popping and really sitting quite nicely. Quite happy with that. Good. So we're going to move on to the top. Keep her high. So for the top, very simply, we're just going to extend our shape. So I'm going to work this with a central parting. I'm going to have to move her a bit lower now so I can see. So if she disappears, I apologise, but I'll show you in the end. So we are now going to work with our central parting again, and here comes the fringe and everywhere. So all we're going to do here is just run an extension of our underneath shape. Okay, so we are, if I move back, maybe you see a little bit clearer. So drop the comb. Go back to this one. So we are going to get rid of the fringe, that's not important, and I'm just going to work my shape exactly the same as I did on the underneath through to the top. Okay, so I'm going to run this shape around to here, get rid of that, but now our elevation comes a little bit higher. Okay, so our elevation was just below 90 degrees, now we're going to lift onto 90 degrees. I want to continue with that bevel shape, but the reason we do the underneath first, the reason I like to do the underneath first, is it just keeps control of that shape. You can make sure now when we're dropping any hair across, or dropping any hair from the top onto the underneath, all we have to do is continue to follow that same shape. Okay, and it will guarantee to give us connection with the underneath. My apologies. So again, into here and elevate high and start to connect our shape. Nice and high. round into your overall shape from the bottom and just connect that shape in. Okay. Check that sits nicely. And then we come back around into here. And remember in here, we brought everything back, didn't we? Okay. So this now will come back onto our point. Here's our point from the top on the other side, making sure they connect. Otherwise you get a big corner forming in there. So if we think of our expanded shape again, we're going to have two forms of corner in there. So very important we start to remove those. And then remembering where we over directed to around here. So still working with that same shape and the same form of structure that we've been creating. And there's our connection. Again in here, remember we pulled it out quite wide. To add some weightlessness feel to the hair. But our elevation is staying quite high now. Okay, because I don't want to build any more weight on there. If I build too much weight down there, it's just going to, as we say, stick out a little bit too wide. And we want to keep away from that. Okay? So, I'm going to blow dry again. Similarly, just used a little wrap drying technique with my 9-row vest brush, and then we'll tackle the fringe. And we are back. So, as I say, just a little nice little wrap dry, and now I'm going to have a little look at this fringe. So, I want to lift the fringe is too long. The suitability shows us that the fringe needs to be at an adequate length. But if I were to do something slightly asymmetric, takes away a bit of hair from what I can do in a new video. So, I'm going to keep it quite clean and very, very square. Now, okay. So as I mentioned before in one of my videos, if you're working a round fringe, cut square in the comb. If you're cutting a square fringe, cut it round on the face. It's a personal rule I like to use. I find it never really lets me down in terms of cleanliness or overall shaping of a fringe or balance, which is incredibly crucial. But here is where you must use your mirrors, okay? So I'm going to start in this left-hand side and work my fringe up to her eyebrow length, okay? And by working a fringe can also cure areas of uncleanliness. So in here it's quite unclean because there's where my roundness of my fringe came in from last time. So this is just going to add to the strength and stability of the overall look, okay? And a fringe, people get quite concerned of doing fringes because they are the focus point, the main area of somebody's haircut. But if you get something really clean and really really complete, it can really complete the work through. So with the points of this is again balancing your scissors on your finger to keep that control and to keep control of your shears, okay? Depending on where you want to balance your finger while it's in there, I have before bounced it on people's noses. I don't think they mind as much if you tell them and then they get a perfect fringe. I don't really think it mattered too much, but it's not great if you do, but do warn them if you're going to. So I'm just gonna just touch your nose just a tad. Some people will be happy with it, some people will probably be quite cross with you. But you know, you got to do what you got to do. If you have to balance your finger somewhere, by all means balance your finger and just explain to your guest that I'm going to do this, but your fringe will be extra clean. And then make sure your fringe is extra clean when you've done it, okay? So I want this to be really strong and really blunt into our line. So I'm going to come back a little bit further. So running a more very square boxy bob shape just in this front little piece. If I spin her around, get that beautiful eye socket open a little bit more. I've rubbed off her eyeshadow as well, so don't look too much at that. I don't know how I did that. So get that real clean focus on your look and get rid of any areas in there that are untidy. So it's opened up her face a little bit more in there. And now we're going to come back through this opposite side. Make sure she's straight. And connect. Now you can do anything with fringes. You can do a bowed fringe. You can do something with a point in the centre. It is all completely up to you when you're working with creative hair. Chances are I'd probably have liked to do something a little bit more asymmetric in the fringe, but we do have to be a little bit careful of where we balance our fringe and where our fringe goes. It would be quite cute to have something a little bit offset, for instance, or you could do something into a big point into the centre or work in something a little bit more rounded. It's really up to you. If you're working on clients in salon, then it's up to the both of you. But if you're working on models for on stage work, which a lot of you probably will do in your careers, the scope is really up to where you want to go with it and what you feel looks good to balance off the guest's face and to really make her look incredible. So play around with fringes. Don't be scared to go for something a little bit out there. Because I guarantee you, if you do take the risk, it will reward you. So let me double check that in my mirror. Could just lift it a tiny bit higher on that left hand side. Perfect. And we are going to run a little bit of spray through just to finish. As usual, your finish is the most crucial part of your entire service. So finish through. So what we have is my personal take on something slightly asymmetric. Okay, so something a little bit flat graduation into some round graduation that tucks into the back and tucks quite nicely into the nape area, but keeps us with enough length to basically do something quite crazy and quite wacky with our outlines. And then from our centre back, started to over direct the hair ever so gently away from the face to slowly elongate that length into the front piece here, but also take our weight line very gently from quite high, just softly coming round into that slight point into the front. So our asymmetricity runs from our outline and also our internal shape that just gradually gets longer and longer. And then something in the fringe area here just to run a really clean line into there to create that squareness and open up her eye socket. So we've got her jaw being pronounced, her eye socket on both sides, and her cheekbone area and into her lips. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you like my haircut. Please do add some comments and comment to us in our classes as well. And yeah, keep safe and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.